Hi, Katzcradul here. I wanted to give you a little update on my garden and update on the drought as well. I showed you these pictures a couple of weeks ago of how bad the drought is here in central Missouri. These pictures are about 3 weeks old, and it's gotten considerably worse since these were taken. We've received only one little shower one evening in these past 3 weeks, so you can imagine how the corn looks now, and the ditches and reservoirs that held water are parched. I noticed when we passed over the Missouri River a couple of weeks ago that the shore, more and more of the shoreline is continuing to show. You'll remember this spring how desperately we fought the insects. The Japanese beetles just ravaged my green beans and my raspberry. Here they are on the raspberry leaves. They were everywhere. We fought them night and day. We were able to harvest most of our raspberries, but only because we fought like crazy, and the raspberries have now recovered. The green beans refused to make, not only because of the damage done by the beetles, which you can see on this leaf that looks like lace, but also because of the extreme heat. They blossomed, but they would not set green beans. However, the good news is that the beans are still green and they're still thriving, and I'm going to leave them and see if they will make any green beans once it gets cooler. The grasshoppers continue to thrive. They love the drought. It's hard to see this one because there's not much contrast between the grasshopper and the straw that Prepper A is standing on. But the blessing about the crickets is that Prepper A is very good at catching them, and the chickens just love them, so it's a great way to supplement their diet. Many of you who follow mine and Paladin Prepper's channels will recognize this picture of Paul Gautschi. He is featured in the film BackToEdenFilm.com. That's where you can find it. It's the Back to Eden film, and here is the address for you, and I'll post it in a link below. We began using his method about 1.5 years ago and have had great success. He's not just a gardener. He is a philosopher, and he is very in tune to that voice that whispers to each of us and tells us what we should do. He makes no apologies for his Christian beliefs and his belief in God, and believes that God speaks to him in his gardening efforts, and I believe that's true as well. I have learned much from him. I have lots of subscribers who have begun to use his method and have been very successful so far. We'll talk more about him and his method in just a few minutes. I know when the tulips emerge in my front flower bed that the garden soon will follow, and the first two things that begin to appear in the garden for me are asparagus spears and little tiny strawberries. We had an abundant strawberry harvest this year. They were beautiful. I have since learned a better way to grow strawberries by watching something L to Survive. I'll post the link below as well. Video interview they showed with Paul Gautschi, where he covers his strawberry with mulch in the winter. Those that are weak will die. Those that are strong will emerge in the spring, and I'm going to do that because my strawberries do need to be thinned somewhat. We were blessed with just an abundance of them. Many of them went into the freezer. Many of them went into jam, and they were just delicious. We've also been able to preserve much of our harvest. Here are some cans of either spaghetti sauce or tomato soup. I don't remember. The tomato harvest started out fairly small. The cherry tomatoes began to ripen first, and then on came the bigger tomatoes. We only planted 4 tomato plants, and you'll probably be surprised when I show you a long shot of my garden in just a little while. These medium-sized tomatoes were volunteers. We have Watermelon, they were also volunteers. We did not plant them. We are completely overrun with cherry tomatoes. I'll be harvesting them into late September if things go as they usually do. They have just been delicious to eat. We just pick them up and snack on them all the time, and they just taste so good. It has been too hot to harvest them during the day. Even if we get up early enough, we can't get them all. So lots of times we'll go out at night at 10 o'clock with headlamps, that's what you're seeing here, and we'll harvest them at night when it's cool. Basil is one of the few things I've planted. It's gone crazy, as have the squash. We started with 4 squash plants. 3 of them have now succumbed to squash vine borers, but I've already canned up all I need for the year. So we have 1 left, and we're guarding it and watching it for bugs very closely. The squash has been delicious and very abundant. When you see pictures of my tomatoes, every 2 days we harvest, and this is about what we get. The eggplant have been very prolific. These are the little purple ichiban. You can see Prepare's little hand here holding one. They are tender and delicious. The potato plants have begun to wither and die, and that way we know that the potatoes are ready to dig and harvest, and we've already dug a lot of them. But I noticed today something very interesting. They're putting on new little green shoots, and I'm just wondering if the potatoes are going to continue to grow and just take a second surge here. So I'm going to leave 3 of them just to experiment a little bit. But I'm going to show you Prepare harvesting some today. We have been so blessed. I feel like God has spoken to me as well in the garden. I think that is probably the best time for me to hear his voice, when I'm out there and communing with nature. And instead of digging the potatoes, I got the impression that I should let the tomatoes just cover them and protect them from the sun. And so I've left them, many of them, in my garden. And here we needed a few potatoes, so Prepare was going to dig one today, but she had to pull back the tomato vines, and we have let tomatoes do what they do naturally and sprawl all over the yard. But it worked beautifully. They protected the potatoes, and the ones we're harvesting do not have any green sunburn on them. You can see she's pulling away straw and mulch here and just pulling them up. We never dig them or use a pitchfork. We just do it by hand, because with the Back to Eden method, the mulch will keep the soil loose and it will keep it moist, and you don't need those tools in order to get the potatoes out. She struggles with one a little bit, I think just because it went kind of deep. But the potatoes are gorgeous. I'll show you a little later. We only dug 3 potatoes today, and I'll show you how many we got off of them. It's really a scavenger hunt when you grow potatoes, and it's so fun for children to get in there and dig and find them. And she loves it. Every time I tell her, she asks every day, "Can I dig a potato? Can I dig a potato?" And she's always so excited when I say yes. So today she knew she had to go pull back some tomatoes to see if she can find potatoes. But how wonderful, how blessed we are to be growing a double crop in the same space. Potatoes underneath tomatoes. Now we have to be cautious that we don't disturb the tomato roots, but we're growing 2 crops in the exact same space. So that's fun. You can see she has a little picture there that she's already gathered up some cherry tomatoes. Her dad picked last night, but it got kind of dark before he got finished, and she went back to check and found those. But we have been blessed with abundance. Food is everywhere. I've already canned up all the tomato soup, all the spaghetti sauce, all the salsa, all the squash we could possibly eat in a year's time. And I have another almost month and a half on these plants that they'll keep producing. I am going to go out tonight and plant another crop of potatoes, trying to get one more crop in before the season is over. I'm hoping that'll happen. I may try to plant a few more squash seeds, see if I can get some to come up. The okra is just now coming on. We put it in late, but it's going to do well. Here are the beautiful potatoes. The tomatoes keep coming on and putting on so many blossoms. I'll give you several shots here so you can see. Now this is in the worst drought our country has known, at least in many, many, many years. And I've got to be honest and tell you that in this whole time, this whole summer, I've only watered this garden 3 times, and never for more than 30 minutes for the entire garden. The back to Eden method works. Here's some lamb's quarter that's growing by our air conditioning unit. We leave that because we like it in salads. It's wild, of course. Here are the raspberries. They've rebounded nicely. We're going to have a bountiful harvest in, well, it'll probably be early, probably be a little before October. It usually is October. They're just loaded. They have totally recovered from the Japanese beetle. Now this is kind of amazing. This is broccoli that I planted too late in the spring to make, and we have since cut the little broccoli crowns off because they are very bitter. We've had triple-digit temperatures here for weeks. It's finally letting up just a little bit. You can see what damage the Japanese beetles did. But these plants are planted in a shady spot, and I've cut the broccoli crowns off, and I'm hoping that maybe if I can keep them from dying, that they will rebound and produce a little broccoli in the fall, those little shoots that come off of the side. So I'm just going to leave them to see. We have so many cherry tomato plants, and I have left them intentionally. Last year, well into September, I was able to take cherry tomatoes to school. We live in a very small rural school district, and the budget is very tight, and tomatoes are never in the budget for the school salad bar. I had so many cherry tomatoes last year that I was able to take a nice large bucket of them in every morning so that they could have them for the salad bar. And the children and the staff were delighted. In fact, I let Prepper A carry them in most mornings, and her classmates thought she was a rock star because they just love the tomatoes, and it certainly would not fit in the school budget. So I hope to be able to do that again this year, because it was so satisfying just to take them in and give them to them, because I had plenty, and out of our abundance we were able to share. I'm going to take a little different turn here, and I have debated whether or not to do this all day, but I get the question all the time: how in the world is your garden thriving in these drought conditions when you don't water and you don't fertilize with commercial fertilizers, and you don't use chemical pest control means and that kind of thing? Let me say first that, as I have said previously, the back to Eden method of gardening works. It allows you to retain moisture. It allows for every drop of moisture that falls on that mulch to pass through as compost tea, so that my garden is being nourished every time any little bit of moisture falls on it. And the moisture that does fall on it is retained. When we dug potatoes today, they didn't come up out of dust or sand. We had to wipe the dirt off of them because it was moist and sticking to them. Even more so a couple of weeks ago, but it has gotten even more dry and intense now. But there is not a single area of my yard or any of my plants that are burned or dry. Everything is lush and green, and it continues to grow, it continues to thrive, it continues to set blossoms. I will tell you that, in my opinion, this another reason it's thriving, and I hope that if you are not Christian, or if you don't believe in God, or if you don't feel the same way I do, that you will refrain from leaving comments that are not pleasant, because I sure would hate to block you. But we pray over our garden morning, noon, and night without fail. We pray that God will bless our efforts, and we tell Him that we will listen to him and do as we feel he instructs, and that we will let ourselves be led by inspiration. When we get that sudden thought into our mind that we have no idea where it came from, we know that that's inspiration, and we try to yield to that and to do whatever we're impressed to do. Power and strength come through living a good life, and I promise you that if you are trying to live a good life, and what does that mean to me? Well, I don't think it's anything too complicated. I just wish the world lived the Ten Commandments. What a beautiful, blissful world that would be if people just did that. It's not any deep, it doesn't need to be any deep theological discussion on what it means to live a good life. But if you're trying to do that, I promise you that if you sit in your garden while the dew is wet in the morning or in the still of the evening, that thoughts and impressions will come to your mind telling you those things that you need to do to make your garden more successful. The same is true with your animals. We've figured out problems with our animals that way as well. I think I'll share one other thing with you too. We don't work in our garden on Sunday. We don't do any work with our garden or our animals other than feeding the animals and collecting the eggs on Sunday. We have 3 little hens, and that's the only work we do on Sunday. We really believe in living the commandment to keep the Sabbath day holy, and we don't do anything that would be considered work on that day. And I think we are blessed because of it. Our garden thrives because we keep that commandment. As we come home from church on Sunday and pass fields where farmers are using their tractors and combines and they're working just like it's any other day of the week, Paladin Prepper has said many times, I wonder if they realized the blessings God would rain down on them if they let their tractors stand idle on the Sabbath. And I believe that's true as well. No work on Sunday here. I will tell you, those things, in my opinion, really help. The Back to Eden garden works. When you get inspiration, you should follow it. And try not working on Sunday. If you and it takes planning. It's not easy. When things need to be harvested, you have to look and keep track of that, and you have to get it done on Saturday, and you may have to get up a little earlier Saturday to get it all done. But if you will really take that as a day of rest, I think you will be impressed at what will happen. I hope you take this information in the spirit it's given. It's not to be preachy or not to say I know better than anyone else, because that's not the case. I'm just telling you what works for us and what has blessed our life. I hope it helps. Cat's Cradle.